Matrix. We can have a matrix that's going to be semi-solid. We can have a matrix that's going to be solid. So yesterday, and then the one that's going to be the liquid. Okay, so yesterday we left off at the point where we were looking at cartilage, and cartilage was it is the one that we're considering the semi-solid matrix. And one of the things that I was trying to point out yesterday is how, when we have this matrix, we're going to see that we're going to have those blasts, sites, and then clasts. You guys remember that, okay? The blasted what? What does that do? Gives rise to. Our site is the mature cell, and a clast is going to be breaking down. Okay, and then because we're now in this semi-solid matrix, they're now the mature cell. Okay, the mature cell is stuck in the matrix, in their home, the lacuna. Okay, so now we're going to move to the matrix that's solid, bone. Now, when we think about bone, what comes to mind? Hardened? What? Calcium? Anything else? Movement. All right, movement. Structure, hopefully. Okay. Just take a look at these, pass them around. Let me think here for a second. Cartilage, we saw, didn't, we talked about it's got to grow, okay? Because we get itty-bitty baby and then we get adult, all right? Well, now that means the same thing for bone. But the cartilage didn't have a blood supply. Does bone? Does bone have a blood supply? How do we know that it has a blood supply? Okay, we got bone marrow. But then, I don't know, we break a bone, doesn't it bleed? Yeah. Okay, so now we're looking at this matrix that is going to be completely solid, all right, but it has a blood supply. So what is that going to tell us about this matrix? We saw that because cartilage didn't have the blood supply, if it got damaged, we couldn't really repair it. Okay? Bone can repair. What else is bone going to be able to do? If it's got the blood supply, do you think maybe it's going to have the ability for this material to maybe get built up, broken down, renewed? Yes. When you think about bone, though, do you ever think about it being a wet material? Because you hear people say, well, it's dry as a bone out here. The reason they say that is because usually the only time we could really view bone was after death. And things that, are broken apart and that sort of thing, we could see, and at that point, yes, the bone was dry and brittle, okay? Bone is very rich, very living, very dynamic, okay? It is not something that is just static, You know, it's a growing, living material. And when we talk about it having those living cells, okay, this is very true. And the way that this matrix is going to work, okay, once again, we're going to see that we have our blast, and this time, because we're dealing with bone, osteo is referring to bone, okay? So the osteoblast is going to be what gives rise to the matrix. And then, once we have that matrix get laid down, just like I showed in cartilage yesterday, when the cell gets stuck this time in that matrix, what we're going to see is we're going to have an osteocyte, okay? And then our matrix this time, it's going to actually get laid down in circles. So the blast is going to help to lay down this matrix, and we're going to see at the ridges that get formed the site, that osteocyte. Does that make sense? So the matrix, now here's where it's going to get a little interesting, and then we're going to look at it more when we get to this chapter. This time, the matrix is mineralized. Now, we already mentioned one of those minerals, the calcium, right? The other one, phosphate, calcium phosphate. Now here's what's going to happen. Yesterday, when we were talking about structure of a building, we mentioned the rebar and the cement, okay? What we're going to find in bone, the collagen fibers that are huge and tough, okay, they're going to serve as our rebar. So that collagen fiber will be laid down, okay? Actually, it'll be this huge web-like structure that gets formed. And then that little site, that little blast, the little blast that's going to be laying down that matrix, it's going to be laying down the hydroxyapatite, not appetite, like eating, okay? Apatite, which is the calcium and the phosphate. So if we've got that structure of those collagen fibers, it looks like it's not very well organized, but trust me, it is, okay? So those collagen fibers get laid down, the little site comes up, blast comes along, laying down that calcium phosphate, and then as it lays it down, it slows down and slows down and slows down, and then gets stuck in it, and it's now site. But this time, we're going to have these nice little ridges, circles, like tree circles. They get formed for the bone. And the osteocyte, once again, once it gets stuck, it's going to be in a lacuna in the home. And when we talk about bone, we've got two types. We've got spongy bone and compact bone. Spongy bone. The term is a little bit misleading because when you think of a sponge, we don't have one, but when you think of a sponge, what structure do you think about?
Pores.
Pores, The hole's squishy, okay? And that's the structure that we're going to get, okay? But the spongy bone, believe it or not, is what's going to give strength to the hard, compact bone, which is kind of weird if you think about it. But there's reasoning behind all that, and we'll get to it in that chapter. So spongy bone creates this like webby, holey looking type of structure inside, and especially at the ends of the bones, okay? And then the compact bone is going to be the bone that we find surrounding it. And just like the name implies, compact, okay? And when we begin to look at the compact bone, this is what an osteon is going to look like. Any idea what an osteon is?
That circle, or
that entire circle with all of those little tree circles around it. That one structure that we're getting a view of like this through, that we're looking into, is an osteon. But wait a minute. Did I say that the osteon was the cell?
What's everything included this thing?
The osteon includes that blast, the site, the matrix, and then, guess what we're going to also find today? The clast. The clast did what? Breaks it down. So, then when I'm looking at this, does anybody happen to know like where it belongs on the body?
What is it?
Part of my humerus and radius and the ulna. Okay? Now, an osteon. So I can get it on video. That circle that you're looking at, okay? This compact bone, all right, would be full of osteon. Is everybody with me? Okay? And the osteon would run the length of the bone. So this circle with the tree circles in it, okay, this osteon, you would have it running the entire length of that bone. And then another one, the entire length. And another one, the entire length. Is everybody kind of following me? Okay? So it would just be these circle structures running the entire part of all of this bone. That's making up my compact bone. There's a reason for that, okay? So I want to know that you kind of understand that structure, because we're going to come back to that when we get into that chapter. Okay? Any questions about that so far?
is that what goes to repair?
Yes. Because if we think about, let's say, this part of the bone, we're going to have osteons running this entire length. Well, it might be that this bone needs to build up. Maybe we started lifting weights or something, okay? And it could build up and make more osteons. But let's say we stopped lifting the weights and the bone needed to break back down, okay? Those osteons could break down. Maybe just throughout the normal process, which happens, maybe throughout just the normal process of bone living, because that's what it is, it's a living material, okay? Which means it builds up and breaks down 24/7, 365, 366 if it's a leap year. Do you know how many times, if you live to be the estimated age that they, okay, say that we're supposed to get to in our country, okay? Do you happen to know how many times your skeleton rebuilds itself, well, actually replaces itself, because of this natural process of building up and breaking down throughout its lifespan? You replace it 7 times. You replace your entire skeletal system 7 times throughout your life. Now, that's great as long as you've got those minerals and the collagen fibers. Now, as we get older, that's not necessarily the case, because collagen fibers are going to break down. The older we get, our ability for the calcium and the phosphate decreases. Vitamin D decreases. Lots of things happen as we get older to keep us from having a strong skeleton. How do I know that that's what takes place? What happens to older people? We get osteoporosis. And believe it or not, that's a breakdown in the spongy bone. And because it's a breakdown in the spongy bone, it affects the compact bone, leading to that bowing over, like maybe we see with people with osteoporosis, and then the breakage of the bones. Spongy bone is what gives compact bone strength. It's really cool. Now, the next connective tissue is the one that we consider the fluid. This time, when we talk about the matrix is going to be what we term the plasma. One of the things, because it's a liquid, we really can't have fibers in it. I mean, do we want the blood in our body flowing through the vascular system having fibers in it? No, okay? So, we need other tissues to be present so that it can move through the vessels, and that we can have movement in and out of the vessels of the body, the arteries and the veins. When we talk about blood, we're going to say it has formed elements, basically pieces that are existing in it. Those pieces will find red cells, white cells, platelets. And so we call those our formed elements. The term for getting this fluid, we get it from what's called hemopoietic tissue. Anytime you hear the term heme, we're referring to blood. Now note what it tells us, because a lot of times when we talk about anything, you're fine, Candy. I just kind of leaned over a little bit when I was walking by, because I went backwards, and I should have stayed going forward. Now, hemopoietic tissue forms blood cells. It's not saying strictly red blood cells, which is what a lot of people think about. They think about it only being the red blood cells. But we have more than that. We've got the red blood cells, We've got the white blood cells, and we've got our platelets. So that's what it's giving rise to. And we've mentioned that there's two types of bone marrow, the yellow, and we mentioned the brown. And now we're going to see that we have the red. Okay? When we get into part 2, when we start talking about blood, we're going to actually come back to this information. So just kind of somewhere, file it in the back of your head and kind of keep a reference to that.
I'm sorry. So, this time,
It's the, well, bone, that's what we're going to, when we think of bone marrow, that's what it is. It's the hemopoietic tissue. And so that gives rise to those red, white, and the platelets. So when we get into that chapter, we're going to come back to all of this and look at it a little bit further. Like I said, the blood cells, we're going to form those. It's found in what we know as the bone marrow. When we talk about red bone marrow, now look at what we're seeing here. Because we're talking about in the bones. Now, as an adult, we only have certain bones throughout the body where we're going to be producing red blood cells. Can you think of any of, or can you think of what type of bone is where we're going to find the marrow? Well, spongy's got to be present. So, the long and flat bones are where we can find production. But as an adult, that means like the femur, the pelvic, and the ribs. Not a whole lot for the red blood cell production. Doesn't sound that way, right? But we're not growing anymore, okay? So that is actually the production that we need. And in the case of like a hemorrhage, trauma, the body can get other tissue started to, you know, make up for the blood loss. But a lot of times you give them blood, blah, 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 blah. Now, in children, every bone of the body is for red marrow. Why? They're growing, you know? And how many of you, like, are around kids, think about little kids growing up, and even as we get into a little bit of the preteen years and maybe the teen years and that sort of thing, they sit down, eat a meal, and then 20 minutes later, I'm hungry. They are. Because their body is much more productive than ours. So they're actually hungry, you know. It's like I can't, you know, when I have my grandchildren, I can't fill them up. I'm like, you just ate. I don't care, I'm hungry. Now, as we get older, we're going to find that the bones that, you know, once we stop growing and so forth, it's just going to simply fill up with the yellow marrow. Okay, so that's what we end up getting as we get older. Now, under this information about the connective tissues, all right, so we've had all of the ones about where we had like the loose areolar, we had the dense regular, dense irregular, we had the ones that had the semi-solid, solid, liquid. Well now, you know, and don't forget, connective tissues have a lot of different tissues under them. Another tissue that we're going to find in the body, now I'm not saying it's connected, we're moving forward now. Muscle tissue. The job. Move something. Make it move. Make it work. One of the things that we get, muscle tissue, is going to contract and relax. But it doesn't just apply to what we think about as skeletal muscle. Because when you think of muscle, is that the muscle that comes to mind? Skeletal? What else comes to mind? Your what?
Just like the regular muscles that you would use to push.
Which are the skeletal. That's your skeletal muscle.
Breathing muscles.
Well, breathing is going to be based upon muscles in between the ribs, and then this really huge muscle on the inside, smooth muscle, the diaphragm. And so when we think about muscle, yes, skeletal muscle, definitely a huge one, because that's what's giving us this ability to write, to look up, to sit down, to stand up, to walk, to run, to sleep, whatever the case might be, okay, for the body's movement. That and the skeleton together. And then, of course, ligaments, tendons, all that sort of stuff, and nervous system. I'm getting ahead of myself. Now, we have 3 types of muscle in the body. We've got skeletal, cardiac, smooth. Skeletal, just like the name implies, with the skeletal system. Think about the skeleton. Cardiac, just like the name implies, strictly to the heart. Okay, pretty cool muscle too. Smooth, anything on the inside of the body. That's the best way for me to explain it. Muscle tissue. The structure is going to be very unique for all 3 types. So our idea of what we currently think about for a cell, we're going to have to change it. Okay, which hopefully to this point now, you've kind of added some other pictures of cells to your memory. Rather than just squishy, we've kind of showed that we've got the cubed, we've got the squamous, the one that looks like the fried eggs, we've got the columns, okay? We've got different types of cell structures. Now, we're going to have to add some more to the memory for the muscle cells. And, wow, I went way long on that.